Good morning. I'm Marta Bartnicka. I work for Dolby Laboratories, you know, the sound processing company. I am not a sound engineer, unfortunately. I work in a group which is called Publishing Engineering. Publishing Engineering is a group that stands behind documentation team, behind technical writers, and supports them with tools, with process, with everything they need to publish, with everything they need to communicate with engineers, and of course, last not least, to communicate our beautiful documentation to the clients. And why documentation is so important at Dolby? Because, you know, Dolby does not sell speakers. Dolby sells technologies. And for a technology, you basically need to describe it. So at Dolby, documentation is not a part of product. It's basically the product in many cases. Our documentation is authored in DITA, mostly, with an increasing percentage of Markdown. The reason why Markdown is because there is always too few writers. There is always something that needs to be documented by engineers with that amount of technologies to be documented. And engineers contribute also to the documentation. So we actually have a blend of DITA XML and Markdown published by different flavors of highly customized DITA OT. And why AI in this picture? Because, well, last year, 2 years ago actually, when AI became a thing, generative AI became a thing, it was an instant thought that maybe it can do something for us, it can help us author, can help us write, and help write also those who are not technical writers and still need to write. And here is a beautiful picture by my colleague, Michał Harytczak, from 2023. When ChatGPT became a thing and GitHub Copilot became a thing, there was initial thought, how can it help us? How can we utilize it? And the answer was that it's not so easy. It's not so easy because, let me see if I can, yes. First, because the public services like ChatGPT know very little about our documentation, which is mostly proprietary and only available to our licensed clients. And secondly, because we don't want to share these resources, code and documentation, with the public engines. We don't really want to throw our valuable documentation onto OpenAI and just give it to them. Same about code and Copilot. So over the next few months, we had to build something that was not just dealing with public systems, but was a bit more proprietary. So what we did is called StormyAI, and it is both delivering Dolby knowledge to AI as a background, as a context information, and it is secured, so it is built on private system rather than just throwing our data onto public systems. With that, I have to mention that our first pilots were with Oxygen and with AI Positron, but at that time, the level of confidentiality and customization, not because of Oxygen, but because of how OpenAI operates, was just not meeting our expectations. So we built something which we call StormyAI. That's for 100% internal use as of today, internal use for Dolby employees. And I will demo a little bit of that still. And the recurring question is that, is this system named by Stormy Daniels? Engineers of a certain age always ask me this question, so I have to say no. That was not the idea. The idea was behind another concept called Shitty First Draft. You can Google that. There is a book about writing called Shitty First Draft, which is basically about overcoming writer's block by writing just something and then improving it. It helps many people to get started rather than look at the blank page and just get blocked forever. And because Project Shitty wouldn't probably fly in a corporate environment, we called it Stormy. So Stormy First Draft is the idea that will basically be behind most of my presentation, that AI helps you create some kind of draft, and you take it from there. It doesn't do the work for you, it does you the draft, be it whatever draft. So our initial assumptions when we were designing the system was that it will not be just for technical writers, it will be also for support and for engineers, and theoretically we were right. However, I will show you in a moment how this idea is developed. So for writers, of course, create the initial draft, maybe extract terminology, maybe use it to rework the very, very first draft, for instance, to detect inconsistencies or improve the text in some form, which turned out to be a really important use case. For support, to help them react to customer issues, maybe improve the training materials, and maybe expand their technical knowledge by quickly analyzing some existing documentation, which, as I already mentioned, we have really tons of. For engineers was to quickly build documentation because they are not documentalists and they still have to do it, to reuse existing content, which is a bit tricky part because I will mention later that using AI as a search engine is not necessarily the best idea. And basically to figure out how to integrate AI into our existing tools, which sort of is in the process. And here comes a picture which I don't really expect you to look through. The basics is that we are using AWS Bedrock as underlying system with all the AI engines, all the AI models that Amazon currently provides. None of them is OpenAI. It's not because we don't like OpenAI, but just because it happened to be so that Amazon does not support this one. And we are related to AWS infrastructure anyway, so we started from this one. Among the text generating engines, I have to mention Claude, Anthropic Claude, which turns out to be my favorite. There are a few others. We have Llama, we have Mistral, and we have Stable Diffusion for image generation, which is currently not our priority, so we are mostly into text and code. So whatever Amazon can provide, we give to our writers, engineers, support people. And the good part with it is that we are not stuck with one AI model. We can have several just to choose straight in the interface. On top of that, we built the interface, which allows to authenticate our internal users and pass their prompts to the AI system. The users being all types of users, so both engineers and information developers and support people. So as I mentioned, Stormy can do text, images, and code, where main use case remains to be content drafting and content editing. So Stormy first draft idea. Image generation is additional use case which we, as I said, don't explore that much, so we just attached Stable Diffusion as it is and we let people play with it. We will probably explore it a bit more, but for that we would need to improve the training data that we have. But working in text mode is already powerful with diagrams. That's what we learned. And I will get to that in a moment. The third use case is code generation, which we initially didn't think of, but of course, even the generic models can do code very well. However, for that, we have, when it goes to customer-facing code that's going to be licensed, we have a legal clearance in progress, but I will get to that by the end. So let me demo a little bit how the basic usage of Stormy can be like. So here I ask Stormy to rewrite this message, user interface message, invalid file, zip file damage, or base ICM file missing. I ask to give me 5 variants that are better English and better understandable for end users. So it gave me 5 variants, which maybe depending on the voice and tone that the UI is supposed to be, I can choose something out of them and figure out something better, because definitely the original message is not very understandable. So that's one of the very good use cases, one of those I call safe use cases, and I will explain that in a moment, why safe, where you have something written, you know it's not perfect, you know exactly what you want to say, but you just want some ideas how to say it better. But I mentioned that we are not satisfied with base models because we have lots of knowledge that the world doesn't have, that public engines like OpenAI and even Claude or Llama, they couldn't harvest that knowledge because it's not publicly available. It only sits in our resources and it's only provided to our clients. So we took, clean data sources that we have, and we use them as a, not exactly training material, but as a context material for the AIs that we are using. The materials are Dolby Customer, which is a huge customer portal with Dolby documentation, public websites, database of requirements. The requirements are specific, they are short text that define technologies, and the style guide. With the style guide, there will be a funny thing, but that later. So how we operate, we don't retrain really models. We went into what's called RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation, which is that when user sends their prompt, it first searches, so our system first searches through our data sources and finds documents which are relevant to the prompt, and adds the extracts from those documents as a hidden context. Then the prompt goes to AI with additional context from what we know is true, from what we know is our valid documentation. And then these selected documents go to, along with the prompt, to one of the AI models which are delivered through Bedrock. And then the response is generated, and also users can see those documents that were used as a context. So here is an example which will turn out to be more interesting than I expected. So I asked, actually this is the demo I recorded for a big Dolby event. It turned out really funny, because I asked Stormy for 3 examples of where IMS 3000 is used. It's a cinema system. First, without Dolby sources, it basically couldn't tell much about it. It was not even sure what IMS 3000 is. If I specified Dolby IMS 3000, the public systems would probably know something about it, but not very much. So I asked the same question using our sources, and the result will be totally different, because we will now search through those sources, find, in this case, top 5 references from each of the sources, and add those as additional context. Different. It will come up in a moment. Yeah. So it gave very nice information so it identifies that it's a cinema system. It provides those references, those reference documents. And you can click on those links. That's our interface. That's not AI anymore. You can click on those references and get to those sources and see the real information, not AI-generated information. You can look at the sources and more of the context. The funny thing about this response is that even though AI was using Claude, in this case version 3, my favorite, was using valid existing data sources, one of the 3 answers is wrong. It's factually incorrect. IMS 3000 NB mode is not used in dual projector setups. And in the room, in this Dolby conference, there were some 30 cinema specialists, and pretty much almost every of them came over to me after this presentation to tell me that, did you notice that the 3rd answer is wrong? And luckily, my next slide was exactly this, that you always have to validate the correctness of generative AI output. So, however, even if we attach true information as a context, it can still generate false results. Even with that, we still find it useful. So this is what we learned from our users. After first alpha phase, we realized that they not only generate text, but for instance, they generate very nice text-based diagrams like mermaid, plant UML. They use, very successfully, they use AI for migrating code. In this case, my favorite example is migrating some very complex legacy XLT into Python that my colleague did. A very good use case is I demonstrate rewriting UI messages or other UX writing, just rewriting to better English, better understandable. Another one, converting engineers' notes into a draft of documentation. So this is basically what we built this system for, and it works perfectly well. And also rewriting an existing draft to follow certain rules. For instance, convert paragraph into bullet points or convert passive voice to active voice. These are the features that are built into Oxygen AI positron. So I have very good experience with this type of usage of AI. All of that, getting syntactically correct data from generative AI, not just ours, from any generative AI, is trivial. So the hard part is getting the right content, but the right factually correct. But getting technically correct data is trivial. So I took this example. I asked Stormy if it's true about, if it's sure about the third point, and that's the famous trick with AI that it can sometimes correct itself. So it's confirmed that it was wrong about the third point and admitted that the third point was not valid. So I asked to rewrite this, the correct part of this response as a DITA XML reference topic. And you will see that it did it right from just the first try. Actually, I did it yesterday because with AI, you never know if the result on day n+1 will be the same as on day n. And I didn't want you to watch me struggle in that case. But here I was lucky, really in the first prompt, perfectly correct reference DITA XML document with the right content. So lesson from that is that if our technical writers manage to push AI to generate the right information from the right sources, they can in no time just wrap it in DITA format and just paste it to Oxygen. And yeah, here I had a predefined reference topic, but as you can see, I got a valid XML topic with no extra effort. So this is our learnings from the first phase. And also in the first phase, we defined what we call safe and unsafe use cases. This is probably the most important slide in what I'm showing. Safe use case is when you know whether a response is factually correct or not. So it's when you're using AI as, there is another expression next to shitty first draft, another expression that I want to promote, stupid digital assistant. So if you're using AI as your stupid digital assistant to do the tedious work for you, but you know what kind of result you expect, then it's a safe use case, because if it does it wrong, you can detect it. Unsafe use case is when you don't really know, when you ask about something you don't know, because then, if you do it for a business purpose, you will still need to check the result in some reputable source or go to an SME. And then phase B, beta, when we started using data sources widely and started onboarded more users. So it's increasing number of users with little programming experience who successfully generate scripts, for instance, for reworking legacy code. A nice feature was that some users started using Stormy for summarizing Teams meeting transcripts, and they claim it's better than Microsoft Copilot with that. We are proud of Claude, really. Definitely users request more Dolby sources because there is more documentation that I have shown in what we are using, more content that we could attach as this additional, information to search for additional context, and we will do it. In the second half of this year, we will do it. And also users request the capability to have their own, like custom GPTs, okay, to have their own set of documents that they will have as a permanent context. Interesting fact is that only 3% of users want to rate the outputs, and I will say at the end why this is bad, but I have a plan to overcome it. And as I mentioned, generative AI is not a good replacement of search because there is this attitude that people think that if they have a pile of information which is not really well structured, they will just put it into AI and AI will do the search for them. So this is a result of using our style guide as a resource where a person asked, I cannot demo this because I don't really remember where to find this conversation with AI. But a person asked to check a piece of documentation against our style guide. And instead of specifying what style rules they want checked, they just attached the style guide as a source. And all of a sudden, Stormy has made up a rule that we should use spaces between words in file names. It even made up the number of page where the rule is and the number of the rule itself. Of course, we are not suicidal at engineering, and we don't ask users to put spaces in file names because this always, even though it's 2024, it always backfires somewhere. So definitely, it's not what we have in the style guide. It's the opposite. So if you have a style guide, it's probably better to implement a non-AI checker of such rules that can be defined and use generative AI for generating and not for searching against fixed rules. So we have Schematron, we have Veil, we have Term Checker, we are now building VS Code plugin for the fixed rules to prevent people from using AI where it doesn't belong. And coming to the end with what I am to say, as I promised, this consideration about licensing. So what we produce, we generally produce content, code, and stuff because we want to license it. We want to get money for it. We are not doing a lot of, Dolby does marketing material, but it's a small fraction of what we produce. So it is important that whatever we produce, we can license. With AI, it becomes tricky because nowadays, it's not clear what the engines were trained on, and both images and code and text can be licensed by somebody, and AI can be just blindly reusing it as it is. So you might turn out infringing somebody's some copyright owner rights, or breaking some open source license, and this is not so straightforward. So with code, we are still waiting legal clearance. For AI-generated images, it's a no-no to put them on the marketing material as they are. For text, it undergoes many checks and edits anyway, but it is important to remember not to just throw it as it is. I hope that Artificial Intelligence Act in Europe will help civilize this a little bit, and similar regulations worldwide, to have training data transparency with proper attribution to content owners, and maybe tagging AI-generated content as well. There will be more about AI and XSLT in the later sessions, so I will just show very tiny little examples of what we are doing. So as we realize that AI, even the baseline models, they are very good with coding, and whatever standard is defined, is widely defined in the internet, AI can do it pretty well. We started using, as I said, we have a pretty complex DITA OT implementation for our publishing. So I started using Stormy for analyzing and reworking some legacy templates that I failed to even understand after a while, because they are years old and there were a number of people editing them. And also, my colleague has very successfully migrated some of the, not bad, but very complex XSLT that nobody wanted to further develop into Python, which we have more people who want to develop. Also, with other XML processing, well, AIs in general are very good with processing XML because this is a well-defined thing. So you can provide example and say, convert me this into that, and AI will write you a nice piece of code to do it because you can specify exactly what you want. And here is a tiny little example of how we converted. So we had an algorithm to extract from to take term-based extract, which is one XML, and generate out of it. So this is the term-based extract. And we need to generate out of it another XML, which will be used by Oxygen term checker. And I provided some code that we used to take something else out of this term-based extract. And with virtually one prompt, I got a valid code, which gives me the valid term checker file, the file for term checker definition. It then required some tweaking, some adding additional conditions, but it gave me valid stuff at the first try. So this is the type of XML-related work that AIs are really good with because they like situations when things are well defined and when you know exactly what you want. And with XML, you always know exactly what you want. And you can provide examples and you can provide the expected results. So, conclusions so far. Generative AI is helpful, but it's prone to factual errors. And we have to mind the safe and unsafe use cases. So we are not yet ready to build a customer-facing generative AI solution, but we focus on improving AI solution for our internal users. At this moment, nearly 400 and counting. More data sources and custom data sources, also those like custom GPTs. We are into quality checks. We are just starting investigating the automatic metrics, and for that we need human ratings also. Of course, legal clearance for code generation, and explore generating diagrams and images. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Marta. I think it raises a lot of questions, such an interesting topic. So, are there any questions? There is a question over there, Mohammed, please.
Thanks for your presentation. It was really great. I'm wondering, you mentioned earlier about the not sending your information to certain providers because you don't want the data leakage, the proprietary information. So do you get that? And I assume you get that in the stack with Amazon Bedrock. It runs your Claude models there. Is that how that works?
Yeah, so Amazon Bedrock is generally our underlying infrastructure, and we have the security guaranteed security, agreements with Amazon. So they provide us, so to speak, walled garden for our Claude implementation, Claude, Llama, Mistral, and all this stuff.
Okay, thank you. One more question.
Hi, Alan Painter. I wanted to ask you about converting from XSLT to Python. You think that's an advance? Because I think in this crowd we would see that as a downgrade. So just wanted to ask you about that.
It depends. I can show you during coffee break, I can show you the XSLT. It is very beautiful but very complex, and we would have no capacity to develop it as quickly as we need to. And all of a sudden, we have a very urgent need to improve our term checkers, different flavors of term checkers, and getting it done in XSLT would take ages. Getting it done in Python is possible. So we just, instead of finding someone who will struggle the XSLT, which was supposed to be me, but I failed, we converted that to Python, and with Python it's kind of easier, and we still get the results. But our major processing for publishing remains XSLT and these beautiful DITA OT plugins that we maintain. Yes.
Okay, thank you. I suggest that if there are any further questions, they should be resolved during the coffee break because we have other speakers. But thank you again.
Thank you.
And next speaker will be Octavian.